Look at where Social Security system is. So in 2020, about 65 million Americans will receive over $1 trillion of Social Security benefits. And here's just some of the facts. In 1940, life expectancy of a 65-year-old was almost 14 years. Today, it's over 20 years. So what does that mean? There's a bigger strain on the system because we're living longer. Those numbers even get a little bit more interesting when you looked at the average lifespan for a man around 1935 was around 65. But by the time you get there, then you survive wars, you survive dying young, all of these factors, then you have your normal life expectancy at 65 was about 14 years for men and women. By 2035, the number of Americans 65 and older will increase from approximately 56 million today to over 78 million. So that's one of the big challenges, right? We're gonna have a lot more people in the system. Fortunately, we do have a big millennial generation behind them that'll be paying into the system, and hopefully we'll have a good immigration policy to allow more people to come in and have more workers in our system, which will help to offset some of this Social Security challenges. That's a topic for another day. Here's one of the big challenges. There are currently 2.8 workers for each Social Security beneficiary. By 2035, there will be 2.3 covered workers, right? So again, this is the challenge, is you don't have enough people paying into the system based on the number of people that it's covering. And that's one of the benefits of our society is we have longevity. We're living longer. Retirement ages haven't been pushed back that much. We're living longer, so it's putting a bigger strain on the system. So, how do we go about making some changes? Apologize, this is a little bit blurry. So just so that in case you're not aware of this, let me get my little pointer here. The way that they determine how much you're going to pay in Social Security, it's based on your wage base, which is up to $137,700. So what that means is on $1 that you earn through wages, through W-2 wages or sole proprietor income, up to $137,700, you pay at a rate of 6.2% that goes into Social Security. 6.2% is what you as the employee pay. Your employer matches that. So the total amount that goes in is 12.4. So all the way up to 137. Now, once you're above 137,000, then you're not taxed anymore. You basically paid all of that you need to pay. And the reason why they cap it is because the benefits are capped. So if you had a wage base of 300,000 and you had to pay tax on that full amount, you're not getting any benefit out of the system. So they cap it so that it feels a little bit more like a pension, right? You pay in and you receive a benefit at some future time. So that is the rate. And we'll come back to this. Try to remember this 12.4% rate, because that's going to factor into some of the tax fairness conversations that I want to have. But that's essentially what this looks like, okay? And there's other items on here we're not going to cover today, but that's what this looks like for 2020. And if you look at, there's a couple things on here. I'm going to read just this top paragraph. Over time, Social Security taxes have become a major share of federal revenues. When the tax was first collected in 1937, the combined payroll tax was 2%. It raised $580 million, which is about $10 billion in today's dollars. And in 2019, the total amount collected was $914 billion, and it represented 26% of the total federal tax receipts. So think of that. It's had such a big part of the federal tax revenue that's coming in is going into is being collected for Social Security benefits, and pretty massive. So this started as a small insurance type of a policy, and now it's obviously a pension that most retirees rely on. I should say all retirees rely on. So the amount that came in, again, was about $914 billion. You can see the amount that's coming in for Medicare. Now we can talk about other issues there's tons more complicated ways to fix Social Security, to fix Medicare. I just have a real simple solution, because complicated in Washington doesn't seem like it's going to work. So let's be real about it. So if we actually look where we are today, we've talked about that there's this trust fund. There is a Social Security trust fund, which has almost $3 trillion in it. But this is what's happening right now. We have about $1 trillion coming in and about $1 trillion coming out. So for basically the first time in anyone's lifetime, or since it's existed, we have about the same amount coming in as that's going out. And that's the challenge that the government knows is on the horizon, is that what happens when we have more going out than is coming in, right? That's the concern. So let's talk about this. And so when we talk about, this idea that it's not fair for most Americans, what does that mean? What do I mean by that statement? Well, if you pay into it for your entire life, you have that 12% paid into it, from your part and your employer, and you die young, or you die early in retirement. There is a chance for a survivor benefit, but in many cases, there's no money left. All that money that got put in there, there's no money for your kids. There are some payouts potentially for your survivor, depending on how old you are, how old your kids are, but it's a very limited from a death benefit perspective. So, those that don't have long life expectancy are adversely impacted by this, and this actually hurts lower middle class families a lot more because they do have a shorter life expectancy. And the whole idea is that if we could invest this money, it would create substantially more wealth. Now, there is a big debate with, I guess, coming probably from the Republican Party, like we should privatize that. Now, I think in theory, there's some merit there. I honestly, from a pragmatic perspective, I think we're probably too far. But why don't we approach this like a pension? Why don't we approach this like CalPERS does, or major pensions? They invest their money. They're not sitting in cash. And I'll go through that in a second. But let me just show you the impact. So what I did is I built a calculator using Excel. I went onto the Social Security website, used their calculator. So here's what I did. I said, if you start at age 22, and you have a full retirement age of 67, which is basically what it is, and you have a beginning salary of $40,000, and you have 4% inflation of your wages, which means over each year, your wages will grow by 4%, which is a combination of inflation and a combination of you just getting better at your job. So, and your benefits get paid at age 67. So I did this math, and because of the impact of inflation, going from age 22 to 67 is 45 years. That's a long time. So the benefit estimates based on Social Security is $7,362 per month. That's what someone will get for the remainder of their life plus inflation. I then did an investment and said, what if you just invested the money for this person, or you got to invest your own money at a 6% growth rate, a 7% growth rate, or an 8% growth rate? Obviously, these are hypothetical, but at 6, 7, and 8, using 5% income that comes out. Look at the amount of money that actually would come out. So in a 6% growth rate, you'd receive about $8,200 a year, $8,200 a month. At a 7% growth rate, it would be about $10,000 a month. And at a 8% growth rate, it would be about $14,000 a month. I believe CalPERS uses a 7% rate of return on their current investment assumptions. And so let's just say we can invest it like CalPERS. 7% growth, that's $10,695. That is almost 50% more income by having an investment approach. Right now, this money is invested in part in government bonds. And if anyone's been paying attention, the rates of government bonds are now at all-time lows. The 10-year government bond is paying below 1%, and the 30-year U.S. government bond is paying below 1.5%. So Social Security is actually going to earn lower and lower rates of return. Here's the big, I think, sting for the fact that people put all their hard-earned money in for 45 years. Look at the hypothetical account value. So let's say you died at 65, you died at 67. This would be money you could pass on to the next generation. Now, this is kind of in my ideal scenario, the fact that, all right, let me just do an apples to apples comparison. What would a benefit be if you could take control of your money and actually invest it? Now, we all know that a lot of people don't have the right habits to put things in place. They don't have the right investment discipline. So I'm not suggesting this is a perfect solution. I just wanted to do the math to see how far are we off? And this was pretty staggering at higher growth rates, how much money basically the Social Security system is stealing from the average American because they're not getting good returns on their money, right? And there's obviously pieces of the Social Security system that are built in to help those less fortunate. So we have to account for that. But again, this is just the numbers that I did. So I do want to go into what should the solutions be. So my note here that I already kind of addressed a little bit was looking at the fact that while I believe privatization would be an effective option, it's not realistic. So what's the next best option? So invest a Social Security trust fund like a pension rather than in government bonds. The average return on the Social Security trust fund was 2.2%, and the trust fund balance at the end of last year was 2.9 trillion. So if we could invest like a pension and earn a potential 7% versus 2%, that's 5% more per year, roughly. And right around 5% per year on $3 trillion, that's $150 billion of excess. So right now, that would actually allow us to continue to build. And then simple things. Current full retirement age is it's 67. Social Security has been in existence for roughly 80 years. Full retirement has moved from 65 to 67, 2 years. life expectancies have expanded well beyond 6, 7, 8 years. So we have to move full retirement age back. Now, those of you who are close to retirement or in retirement, that's not fair to do to you. So start tackling the next generation. If you were born in the 60s, 68. You were born in the 70s, 69. And if you were born in the 80s, age 70 retirement. We have longer life expectancy, so we should be willing to work longer, and we have to be less dependent on Social Security as the major source of our retirement benefit. And then move it back 1 year for each decade. Now, if you get into the weeds, and this is where this is a very pragmatic, simple approach, they might have to tweak this a little bit, a year here, a year there. But let's also not call this an entitlement program. I'm sure for many of you, if you're collecting Social Security, you don't feel like this is an entitlement, like a welfare. It's not an entitlement. You paid into it. So I don't know if it's going to fly to rename it a public pension, but let's call it what it is. So that's kind of a high level. That would make a massive move towards fixing Social Security. It would be something that would be off our plate. Again, the devils are in the details a little bit. You could adjust that. But that's the high level solution, is let's treat this more like a public entity, a private institution would, and not how our government is focusing. And if you look at, we're at 2.2%, that number in 2020 is going to come down. It's probably going to be in the 1.5% range. So it's only getting worse because of the low interest rate environment that we're in.